Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.
Welcome to Footwork.
So Fabien Lewis, welcome to Footwork.
Thank you, Sean, for having me. Thank you, Dylan, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I mean, before we get started, I have to send my appreciation to you for helping my career get started. Between my cousin and yourself, you kind of got the ball rolling. Obviously, Mongolia was never what I expected, but it was a great opportunity, and like I said, got the ball rolling. So thank you for that.
No, thank you. I mean, you have to be willing to take a dive into something that you have no idea about if you really want to play, and you had that willingness. So I have no surprise that you are where you are right now. So keep on pushing, keep on playing as long as you can.
Appreciate that. And you also had similar experiences throughout your career with traveling the world. But let's start out with where you grew up and where you were born.
All right. I was born in Trinidad, Santa Fe, Trinidad. Lived in the southern part. Grew up playing soccer pretty much in my village. And eventually grew to love the game and pretty much nagged my dad to sign me up to play with the local team. So started off playing with a team called Forest Faizabat. Then went to, a team called Arvin Cornell Coaching School in Siparia. And then when they dissolved, went local, which was literally 5 minutes from my house, 10 minutes from my house, a team called Forest Faizabat. And that's pretty much where I was formed. As I grew older, of course, I grew to love the game more and more, started to watch soccer more and more. During that time, there were so many players that was playing internationally that you would look up to, namely Dwight York, who at the time was probably the best striker in the world, or one of the best strikers in the world. Mm-hmm. Then you had Russell Latapi, who was, at that time, one of the best midfielders in the world. And then, of course, you had Shaka Eslap, who was, playing in the EPL. So with all these players who playing at a high level, you're thinking, okay, they came from the same place I came from, Trinidad. There must be something that I can do to get to that level. So started venturing out, went to Palaseco Football Club, which was one of the stronger clubs in the southern region and by extension the country. And I had the privilege to work with Coach Brian Williams, who at the time had just finished playing with the strike squad, which was a team that almost made it to the World Cup in 1989 and got kicked out 1-0 in the 87th minute by the USA. After that, went on to play for W Connection, which was pretty much the whole Palaseco team that came over with the coach, Brian Williams, and just happened to play together for, I think, 1 or 2 years, won the national title. And that's kind of where, opportunities start knocking. Got the opportunity to move on to play at a college level afterwards, and after that it was pretty much adventure.
Yeah. So was the goal, like you said, you saw these like Dwight York and all these players playing professional. Did you have that thought of playing professional from a very early age?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when you live on an island where, and I grew up in the countryside of the island. In the city part, there's a lot to do. Restaurants, bars, malls. I grew up in the countryside. So in the countryside, all you see is kids playing, because there's no there's not much social life. Mm-hmm. Besides schools. You're not going to see much nice restaurants and Starbucks and big malls. You walk a couple hundred yards and there's kids playing we call it a park, a savannah, which is a park. Let's kids play in a park. You just join them and play. Something you play for like 4 or 5 hours. You don't even know that you missed lunch or you missed dinner. You're just playing and playing and playing. So when you grow up in the country part of the island where all you see is soccer, you go home on TV. You know, there's no cable. There's local TV, and you know everybody goes by a friend. And this was back then. I mean, things have changed drastically now, but back then you go by a friend's house, or you just watch the game on TV, and that's all you're watching. You're watching football on TV, and then you go in and play. You go in and play. So when you go to school, you're playing. So it was a lot of self-taught. There wasn't much like clubs like over here where I'm at. There's a club every 5-mile radius, and there's coaches from all around the world who played, helping these kids. Back when I grew up, it was more you playing and teaching yourself. So your reps is coming from playing on the streets, playing with your friends in school, playing in the park, and you know everybody wanted to be something in the game because that was a love and joy. I mean, that's just that was the thing to do. That was the thing to do.
Right.
So yeah.
So did you? I mean, you then went to and played in college in the U.S. Was that? Did you feel that was the road to playing professional, or what was your decision with that?
No, I didn't. At the time, you know, I was just thinking about playing professionally, and you know, again, you look at Dwight York at the highest level, Manchester United, and you're saying, man, this is the peak. This is the highest point. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than Manchester United. And you're thinking, okay, that's where I want to be. I wanted to play. I had dreams of playing in a World Cup too. And this is a true story, but a really well story. I created an email address when I was about 16 years old. And the email address was stalwart5_2006@yahoo.com. I still use the email. And that email was derived by a couple of things. I wanted to play, this is really, really mind-blowing. I wanted to play in the 2006 World Cup. At the time I was 16 years old. I was thinking, okay, when I get to 21, 22, you know, I'll be playing at a decent level. By 24, 25, I should be at the peak of my career. And I think around that time, it would have been 2006. And so I was envisioning at the peak of my career, I'll be playing in a World Cup for Trinidad and Tobago. The word stalwart came from me being a defender, like a stalwart, like the last man, the general, the guy that holds it together. Number 5 was my favorite number. _ 2006 was the year of the World Cup that I wanted to play in. It so happened that Trinidad and Tobago qualified for that World Cup. At the time, unfortunately, I was not in a good position to play in that World Cup, but around the age to play in that World Cup. But the guys that played in that World Cup was all playing at a very high level, and I wasn't. So it was just visions that I had from a young age, wanting to play football for the rest of my life. And everything I did was just surrounded around that email address. I still have cleats, T-shirts from when I was 17, 18 years old. Autographs that I would always open and watch and say, one day, this is where I'll be. So I never saw the college route being a route to the pros. I always thought that, you know, always envisioned, always dreamt about me just going straight to the professional level, and that's all I was dreaming about doing. Yeah.
And how were you able to? Was it difficult to adapt after kind of putting it out there that your route would be this way? and then it kind of changes and becomes something else. And I mean, ultimately you're in Buffalo, New York, of all places, very different from Trinidad. So how were you able to adapt and kind of come through in that?
Yeah, everyone always tells me, even to this day, that you're crazy for going to Buffalo. It was a big adjustment. Obviously, I went from one extremity where it was very hot to the other extremity where it's very cold, and we had blizzards and snowstorms and 6 foot of snow. Unfortunately, I didn't really live through any one of those as far as the weather goes. But adjusting to the weather was at first difficult. But then I grew to kind of like it, and then I grew to kind of hate it again. So it was, obviously, wearing our gloves again. These were the small details that was kind of visionary. Wearing our gloves, long sleeve T-shirts. I mean, we never had to do that in Trinidad. You look on TV watching Dwight York play, watching Russell Atterby play, watching all these, top players play at the highest level, and you see them with gloves, with long sleeves, with Under Armour, and when they're resting on the field, you see frost coming through their mouth, and Buffalo actually brought those things, because training was always very cold and raining. I was always had to wear Under Armour with a windbreaker and gloves. So in some ways, it kind of reminded me of what I saw on TV growing up as a young kid, right? But the early stages was difficult to adjust, having foot warmers for practice, because, running, not every time would keep your foot warm. Sometimes it'd be freezing temperatures, but we had no other choice.
Yeah.
We had no other choice. We didn't have an indoor dome. We had to go outdoors and practice. But that part of the experience made me really put things in perspective. Like, this is what you really want to do, and it was, yes, this is what I want to do. So I was forced to do it, and I just rocked away with the punches. I was the only Caribbean player on the team at the time. There were some other guys from Toronto that had a Caribbean background. By the time, I was the only guy from the Caribbean. So, it was in many ways very, very lonely, because the things that I could not relate to, the guys that were from the Toronto area, which is also very cold, or Buffalo area, Western New York area, it's very cold, the lifestyle, they can relate to it, but I couldn't. But again, as I said, this experience put a lot of things in perspective for me. Excuse me. And I had to determine if this is what I wanted to do. And the answer was still yes. So it took me like a year. I adjusted really quickly. And then I grew to like it. I used to come outside and play in the snow, have snowball fights. But then it was after so much snow, after going into my junior year, there was so much snow. And, it became all slushy and then nasty because so many cars are driving over it. And, that's when I got really, I had enough time for the spring. But yeah, I grew to like it. I grew to enjoy it and accept it and rock with it. So I enjoyed my time, my experience at Canisius. It was a learning experience for me. I'm very thankful for the opportunity because it helped me to open up my eyes. It was a culture shock at first, again, on multiple levels. But that's part of the journey of wanting to play professionally, because sometimes you can play professionally locally, but there's not as many teams as there are players, and sometimes you might have to go looking for opportunities. So gaining cultural experience through playing in college for me was an eye-opener, and it was something that I took with me for the rest of my career, that it can be any type of extremity. But if you really want to do it, and that's what you're really after, then the mission is to play football, to play soccer, and everything else comes after. So I would always take the mission first, and then think about the non-negotiables afterwards.
And so for the football side of it, how difficult was that transition between Canisius and then George Mason? Did you find it was quite difficult than what you were used to growing up in academies and the coaching wise and things like this?
Not really. What I thought was different was, some of the attention to details. When I grew up playing, we never had that much video analysis, and I also think it had to do with a generational thing. I think I was during a period of transitioning from real old school, where the coaches was old school, maybe the teaching or the lesson plan was really old school, to where it was becoming more and more scientific. So I was actually in that, my period of growth was kind of in that transition. So one of the things that I thought was different was the amount of video analysis that we did, especially at George Mason. At Canisius, not so much. But if I was to be quite honest with you, Canisius obviously had an unfortunate run of form in terms of win streaks, but there were some good players. There were some very good players on the team, and we played against some good competitive games as well. When I went to George Mason, it was the same. There were some good players, and we also played against some very good opponents. Obviously, George Mason had the opportunity to have better facilities. I mean, we had multiple fields. We had an indoor center where we can play indoor on a hard court or futsal. There was a gym. Everything was kind of indoor. And so some of our training would be there. We had a Mondo track. There's more facilities. There was a Bermuda grass field. I think there's 3 or 4. Now I think they have 7 or 8. So the difference really was in the facilities, the attention to details from a visual aspect, watching over games, seeing what was good, what was bad. But in terms of the quality of the players, the level of play, there was a lot of similarities. 2 good coaches. But now that I'm finished my college career and looking back, personally, I feel that Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, junior colleges, I personally feel it's overrated, because I was able to play with a lot of players overseas that came from different college backgrounds and were very good players. And I saw it also when I was in Canisius and went to George Mason. There were some very good players in both universities. So adjusting wasn't at all difficult for me. I embraced the experience at George Mason. I came in as one of the more experienced players. So my role was to kind of help to lead the team to a championship. When I met with Greg and Julius at the time, I flew from Buffalo, New York, and we met. And he told me, we had a chat at a restaurant. He told me what my intentions was for the team, what he had intended me to bring to the team, and what he was expecting, what he was looking forward to. So I knew coming in, I was coming in to help the team win a championship. and I had a pivotal role to play in that. But I didn't feel any pressure, nothing that I was not used to, because I was always used to that growing up in Trinidad. High school soccer in Trinidad is probably bigger than college football over here in terms of the fan base and the pressure and the support. It was much difficult. Playing on the youth national team in World Cup qualifiers in front of 35,000 fans, in different countries. So the pressure wasn't. I didn't feel that pressure. But I embraced the opportunity, and I respected his request and what he expected, and it was just part to deliver. And we fell short 2 times. One in the conference play in the finals, and then in the NCAA tournament. But needless to say, I think that was the second year with the university, and that was a major step forward. That was the first time since in the 90s, I believe, that the school had that type of run and made it to NCAA tournament. So that was the beginning. Once again, that was the beginning for a lot of big things for the university. They went on, when I left, they went on afterwards to eventually win the conference and made several other NCAA appearances.
So how did you, post-graduation, you signed with Western Mass Pioneers, who were playing in the USL second division, the 3rd tier at the time. How was the transition from college soccer to, is it professional, this league? It's more probably semi-professional at the time. How was that transition?
It wasn't difficult. So I actually, so when I finished playing, Coach Greg and Julius, he put me in the office, and before I ended my career, and he told me that there's a couple MLS clubs that are looking at you. One of them was Real Salt Lake.
Okay.
I of course was really excited. Started to look up Real Salt Lake, and try to see who would be the guy that I was going to eventually replace. At the time, it was Eddie Pope.
Wow.
And I was always thinking, oh man, I'll get to play with Eddie Pope. So I was really excited about that. Unfortunately, things didn't go well on a number of reasons. At the time, I believe they were looking at multiple players that were below the age of 23. That was also local. I guess it was like a homegrown player. And of course, they had to make a decision based on their budget, and eventually going with a younger player who was playing at the time with, I believe, one of the biggest conferences. I forgot who it was. And then he pulled me in the office postseason, and he said, "Listen, there's a couple of USL teams that are asking for you, and 2 of them want you to come into preseason. One of them going to sign you directly. North Carolina, Richmond Kickers, they wanted me to come into preseason. Western Mass Pioneers, they're going to sign you directly. They saw you play in the CA tournament finals, and they're going to sign you directly." So it's okay. He said, you have to decide right now. You could decide what you want to do, and then kind of go from there. A couple days after, then Harrisburg City Islanders called him as well. He reached back out again. He said, "Okay, now Harrisburg is in the mix." So I ended up going to Richmond. I was there for a couple of days. They wanted to sign me and offered me a contract. and I eventually declined. Wasn't really happy with the terms of the contract. I went to Harrisburg on the information that it was a very well-run franchise. The coach at the time was Coach Bill. Went over there, was there for only for a couple of days as well. And once again, they offered me a contract that I couldn't pretty much live on. The contract back then was not what it is now. Back then, you would have some guys making like $1,000 a month, $800 a month. Some guys were on per game contracts. So you really had to play really well in training to have an opportunity to play on a weekend to get paid. And then there was one or two players and every team that would be earning like $3,000, $4,000. But that was like one or two players on every team. And those were seasoned players. So after Harrisburg offered the contract and I declined, it was kind of bad. But how I declined was not good. I pretty much told them, I said I would get back to them, and then just left. And next thing they heard that I was signed with Western Mass. So that was the experience for me that I took away, that I knew it was very unprofessional, and I vowed that I should never do it again. So when I went to Western Mass, went to the team, signed the contract upon arrival, and then started playing. The level definitely was different, but in a way that I wouldn't say was much different from college soccer. College soccer, in my opinion, was a bit more win result. Like you had to win by any means necessary, right? And you had the buzzer beater, like the countdown to games, and then all of a sudden, everybody's panicking, one ball through or one ball over the top, and then guys flying on and guys are panicking, and all of a sudden, boom, goal. And that was the excitement of college soccer. And there were some teams that would play pretty good soccer as well, or at least try to play, by keeping the ball on the ground, moving, rotating, with a game plan. And that's what was different with the teams in the USL. You would see a team wanting to win, but not by all costs. They would try to win. There would be a plan to win. And most of the times, teams will stick to the game plan. In the college arena, sometimes you can go out to the game plan to win. And I think that's was the difference for me.
Right.
Well, it's one of them. The players obviously was more experienced, so there wasn't much rush to do things. There was a guy that still plays right now. His name is Emerson. He actually plays on the futsal national team for the US national team. He's the captain. And Emerson, he was a midfielder. Emerson easily could play MLS, eyes closed. But he chose to play with Western Mass because it was close to home. He had a kid. He was married, and he really wanted just to be a local boy. But he was one of the players that really would show me like the importance of just wherever we do is sticking with the game plan. So I would never try to do anything else but just stick to the game plan. And it was just, I felt a level of freedom and just express myself even better. So that was another difference with playing in college and playing in the USL. You had players that was seasoned players that was willing to risk it all to play within a game plan and not worry too much about forcing things just to win. So when that happens, you have a level of cohesiveness, consistency, and obviously an end result. So it was a good experience for me. My first year playing with. We went back to play Harrisburg. We played Richmond. So we played Richmond. We played Harrisburg. Two of the teams that I went to before. We lost I think 2-1 or 1-0 to Richmond. But I had a crazy game. And they called me back again the following year into preseason. And then we played Harrisburg. And I think did we beat Harrisburg or did Harrisburg beat us? It was also a close game. But what was crazy about that year, Harrisburg went on to, I think, win the league. And they went on to the quarterfinals of the Open Cup.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
They played New England Revolution. The guy that replaced me as centre back ended up signing with New England Revolution.
Wow.
And I think he had 2 years or 3 years in the MLS before moving back to the USL.
Wow.
So looking back now, I didn't learn my lesson. But looking back now, that was an eye-opener and a learning experience. That you have to have some struggle, but you also have to be loyal in order to find that sweet spot, which can be, the money you're looking for, the fame you're looking for, whatever you're looking for, that sweet spot. You have to first have a little struggle but be loyal to the struggle and understand that's part of it. And I think now I'm in a position to understand that. But in my career, I didn't really have any mentor to call someone to say, hey, don't do that, do this. It was kind of me and me alone. I kind of paved my own way to my career. I kind of did things kind of on my own. And, that's something that I look back now and I'm very proud of, but of course, always willing to learn more and to hear from guys that did it already to help me with my journey. So yeah, that was a good life lesson for me. Looking back, but of course, through my career, I still didn't get it right away.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to touch on that a little bit later because we had a very good conversation after the first Portugal trial. And I learned a lot from you from that point. And like you said, it's learning from people that have gone through it already. And really, anyone outside the game, it's difficult for them to understand.
Absolutely.
But yeah, before we get into that, so you made the move then to Puerto Rico, which was then the first full-time professional team. And now you're outside of the US. How did that come about, and how was that?
That was after Western Mass. I went back to as I said, Richmond had called me back because I had a really good game against them, home and away, both times. And the GM/assistant coach called me back into preseason. Went back for a couple of days there again, and once again offered me a contract. Didn't learn my lesson. Went to play with Michigan Bucks. At the time, I was late in the game. I had missed a lot of teams try out and kind of had to settle for what was left. And that was no disrespect to Michigan. They are a very good franchise and had very good players. But played like a half a season there. I went to Real Maryland. They started off, I think, in the USL 1. Then moved to USL 2. Had some issues financially. But their first year, they were on a spending spree. It was there I met a guy by the name of Ray. He was a former international for Cuba. Played in the MLS as well, good player. And he hooked me up with, he was leaving to go back because he was doing indoor with Baltimore Blast. And through that he had, it was all networking. So he was indoor during winter and outdoor during the summer. So he came to Real Maryland. We played together there, and at the end of the season, he told me that, hey man, do you want to go and play in Puerto Rico? I know the owner of the team. He's a friend of mine's, and they're looking for some reinforcement. They're trying to win the league and have a good run in the Caribbean Football Union CFU tournament, which is like the pre-qualifiers for CONCACAF Champions League. So for me, it was like, yeah, hell yeah, let's go. And again, I was always seeking the mission first. What I really wanted to do from a kid, it was to play, right? So where I played wasn't really that important to me. Mm-hmm. Looking back now and advising players, of course, I'm in a better position to do that. But for me, it was just play and play and play. So went over to Puerto Rico, played with a team called Atlético de San Juan. And that's kind of like where I learned my Spanish. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say fluent, but intimate level Spanish speaker. But that's where it all started. I had to kind of learn on the fly. Most of the stuff I learned there was street Spanish, which was kind of like not so good words, and then giving information in Spanish. Yeah. The only guy that spoke English was the guy who carried me there, and funny enough, he learned Spanish. He learned English in the US because he never spoke English before as well. He came straight from Cuba off the boat. So he was the one kind of helped me learn Spanish, and then I began to love it, and eventually went to school and blah blah. But playing in Puerto Rico was fun, and it's only when you go to countries then you realize that there's good players everywhere. It's only when you start traveling and realizing, like, hold on, this is the second division, or this is third division, but there's so much good players, but there's not enough top leagues. So you have to end up playing second, third, fourth division, but there will be very good players playing in those leagues as well. And there will also be very good coaches because there's only one coach with a backroom staff, and there's many coaches wanting to coach professionally. So, I mean, looking back now, I mean, and being able to travel the world, then I was able to pull a lot of things into perspective and really analyze things from a grown-up level. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Rio was one of several very good players on the team. But there were other Cuban internationals, players that had just finished playing with the Honduras national team, players that were playing with in the Brazilian first tier football. The coach was a coach from Brazil as well. So, you were in a dressing room with players that can play soccer, that can play football. And then you go to play, against teams like Bayamon, River Plate. River Plate was all Argentines, some of which had played, who were retired players who were playing first and second division Argentina. That, were older guys and, of course, just wanted a new adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And that team was filled with a bunch of Argentine players who had played first, second division for many years. So it was an eye opener for me, because then you get to see different styles, but then you get to realize, hold on, this is crazy that there's players. You look at this player and you're like, this player can play over here, eyes closed, this player can play over here, no problem. And that's what kind of made me want, and maybe be willing to travel the world, because I got to realize that soccer was not only in your circle. Soccer was a universal sport, and there were so many other countries that played it that I didn't know about. I only knew about what I saw on TV and the players you saw on TV. But I think that was the beginning of wanting to make me want to travel the world and see more of what football had to offer.
Mm. And you mentioned it was just a few moments ago that everything is just networking.
Yes,
so taking
yes.
an opportunity like Puerto Rico, and then you go
Mm-hmm.
across the world into
Yep.
Singapore. Like, what are some of the things that you would say are important for players to do to have good networking, to have good networks, and to kind of do these things successfully?
For sure. Well, I'll make one step backward. I had an agent before, right? And I'm saying this because a lot of players sometimes they're scared, right? They're not willing to take a risk. They're not willing to take a chance. Maybe they heard about bad stories, or maybe they're just not willing to invest in themselves on a financial level and a physical level. But I had an agent before, right? And he was a very good agent. In fact, more of a friend. His name was Footwork. And he was someone, he was the first person that told me about Singapore, right? Before the league actually got to the point where I knew more about it. But he was the one kind of helping me and guiding me and things like that. Now, having an agent is a good thing, because only if you have a good agent, and I was lucky to have a good agent. Farouk was a good agent, but there's also not so good agents, right? But having an agent is one thing, but you sometimes close the door to everything else, mm-hmm. because you depend on the agent to do everything for you. But when you travel and you sit down and you talk, you had lunch or dinner with someone that has the same aspirations that you have, then you start realizing, hold on, there's something on here. There's something cooking. And they start talking like, oh, I have this friend I played with, he's over here. Or I know this coach that I had over here, and he's telling me, about this league and that league. And then you suddenly start, making phone calls, writing emails, exchanging phone numbers, and then your network starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, I always recommend to players to, when you're networking, to always try to network with players that have the same type of personality or a similar personality and a similar mentality and a similar drive like yourself. Because there's different types of people that can direct you different directions. There's the ones that I would consider like myself, who will be willing to jump on a plane and take money out of your own pocket to do it, because you know that nobody else knows who you is. Soccer is bigger than who you think you are. The game is way bigger than yourself. There's top players at top leagues that even being there, there's people that are bigger than them. So nobody knows who you is. So in order for you to be known, you have to gain in front of people and get their attention. And the guys that I was networking with had that type of mentality and drive. And those are the guys I stay close to, right? Because I realized that it was a good energy. There's other players and people that you can network with that might be not so driven. I might be looking for shortcuts. And it might take you a longer time to come around. You might be really scared to do things that you should be doing. And there's a saying that someone once told me, and it was from Trinidad. Someone once told me that it was after practice or during a practice. And I think it was some high school coach, I could be wrong. But he said, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. And I remember the training session was hard. I mean, we used to train 2.5 hours, sometimes before games, right? So right there, and then I understood what he was trying to say. And then when I did a lot of things in my later career, I would always remember that quote. And I would always think to myself, like, you talking about you want to do this, I want to do that, but nobody knows who he is. You are nobody, you know. In order for people to know who he is, you gotta get out there and take a chance, man. So networking is all about connecting with the people that have a similar interest and energy that you have, aspirations that you have. Don't network with people that are not thinking big. Don't network with people that are looking for shortcuts and always have a negative energy. Oh, don't talk to that guy. You heard what those guys did. Those guys did this. And like, you got to go out there and sit on your own and make your own decision. And then you decide if it was good or bad. Because sometimes somebody's experience or someone else's thought process is completely different from what you want and where you want to go, or what you experience on your own. So I was always the type of person that I want to have the experience of my own to make my own judgment. And because that's going to help me navigate myself to where I want to be in life as well. So that would be my advice that I would give to younger players. Look for someone that have a similar drive, mentality, energy, like yourself. Don't listen to everything that you hear. Try to do things and have an experience on your own so that can help to form who you are and where you want to go.
That is
Gems.
Brilliant advice, and I can attest to that thus far in my life, but in my career as well, that getting around the right players. It's not necessarily the best players, but
absolutely
makes a huge difference on really your just well-being in general, because you get around the wrong players, things can turn very very bad very quickly.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And you mentioned before, getting around players like yourself or people like yourself who are willing to, drop everything they have and get on a plane and fly to an opportunity, because the reality is nobody knows who we are in other parts of the world. And this was that one story you told me after my little stint in Portugal about how you flew like a 24-hour flight to, I don't know if it was Singapore or Thailand or somewhere Southeast Asia.
Singapore, yeah.
Could you talk about that story? Because for me, it still has an impact to me to this day. I've told Dylan 1,000 times about it. I've told other people. And when things are, not going how I think it would be, I always think of that. Yeah, man,
it's really weird. It was around November, December. It was in November. I remember I was looking at Singapore from August because I had a friend there that was playing. And I remember my past agent was telling me about Singapore, which was a couple of years before that. And I remember when I saw the pictures and I saw Singapore, I said, oh. So I reached out to him and told him, hey, can I come? Can you get me a chance over there? And blah, blah. I just got my first credit card. I just got my first credit card. It was $2,000 on that credit card, right? And I had a lease on an apartment in Fairfax, Virginia too, man. And the lease was going to be up the following year in June, April, May. Yeah, end of May or June, the lease was going to be up. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking, man, I want to play. So I flew in December, but November. But how it happened was really, it was last minute. I bought a ticket. I kid you not, maybe like it was. I flew on the Wednesday. I bought the ticket maybe on the Monday. So the price of the ticket was quite high. I think it was like maybe like $1,400 or $1,500. But I used the credit card. The credit card, $2,000. Well, of course, I had to go over there and I had to get my own accommodation and stuff like that, right? Because one thing about clubs, and that's probably clubs around the world now, unless it's a big club, that have a big budget, that have so much scouts that can go and say, this player is the player we're looking for, and the club say, okay, boom, let's sign him, or let's bring him for a try. But the majority of the clubs, man, you got to go and invest in yourself. So I had to get my own air ticket. I had a very nice hostel on Arab Street in Singapore. I always remember that. Very nice area, Arab Street. Anytime you go to Singapore, make sure you visit Arab Street. It's called Kiwi, Sleepy Kiwi, or Kiwi Sleepy. Maybe they changed the name, I don't know. And pretty much I had to buy my own meals and get around on myself. Singapore is not cheap. Singapore is very expensive. So the hostel, I think, was like maybe like $35 a night, right? Food there's not cheap, but fortunately I was able to connect with some locals. So we found our grocery store that where the locals go shopping. So you get food kind of cheap over there. The metro is quite expensive. It's similar to over here in DC. One ride is like $4 or $5. Yeah. So I'm using my credit card and everything. Not knowing that of course the credit card is working, right? But not knowing that there's fees because it was not an international credit card.
No.
Yeah. Now I know about that because I have that because of the line of work that I do. But I was just using it. But I did have some cash on me as well. I did walk with some cash. I got to Singapore and I was supposed to start training, I believe, the Friday. I left the Wednesday. It was a 24-hour flight. It was a long flight. From JFK, I flew. Well, where did I connect to? Oh, London. It was an early morning flight. I connected in London, British Airways. From there, I went Singapore. I met up with a buddy of mine, some George Mason, in London. We met in the airport, and we drove on the metro to Singapore. But anyways, got to Singapore, and we didn't have practice on that Friday. It was raining, but they only have grass fields. Most of the teams over there only have grass fields. So when it's raining, like over here, some teams don't train, or they find other fields to train on. My team just didn't train. The team I went to, which was Woodlands. So Friday, no training. So what I did, me and a couple of guys who was there trying out, we just went on our own and we just running, looking for fields to kind of juggle or pass the ball around, do some training. Saturday, no training. Sunday, didn't have training. Monday, rain again. Tuesday, rain again. I think it was until the Wednesday, which was a week after I arrived, we finally had training. When I went to the training session, they allowed me to train. But it was only then I realized that there was another defender that they had already signed who had played in the league previous years. So he knew the league. So the guy that took me there, he went and talked to the manager, and I was up in the pavilion in the stands, and I was waiting for the word, like what to do, like change. And he came back and he said, look, they already signed a centre back. They're not looking for a centre back anymore. They're looking for a striker, but they will allow you to train. I was really at that point like, are you kidding me? Like, what next? But I don't know if it was my mentality or if it was growing up in Trinidad or what. But people always tell me this too. They always like, why you always, like, even when things are really difficult, you always acting like if you don't care. Like, it's not like I don't care. It's like, I'm in a moment of like, okay, what to do now? But I'm really, really calm. I wouldn't really freak out. I'm just thinking, okay, you know, what to do now? I put on my cleats, I go down there, and I had a really good session. But the session I had, I was free because they were not looking for a centre back.
Right.
So I was just killing guys, like, you know, intercepting, winning one-on-one, winning headers, breaking up plays, you know, making passes, driving the game forward. And they had like 3 strikers that they were looking at. So the manager ran over and told the guy, let him come back tomorrow. So the guy's like, why? Why you want to come? He's like, no, let him come back tomorrow because, not because we sign a centre back doesn't mean we won't sign a second centre back. So when he told me that, I was like, what? There's a chance here now. So
roller coaster.
Yeah, roller coaster. So I asked him, I said, what? He's like, well, maybe, you know, you did well, maybe they want to sign you, blah, blah. So then they took us to this big stadium, and we had like a scrimmage, 11v11. And what they did that day, they matched me up with all the strikers that they brought in. So they put me on a team, the weaker team, and they put all the strikers that they were looking at, which was, one of them had already signed, and they were looking for 2 more, one more. They allowed to sign 4 players. And so they already signed 3. One of them was a guy by the name of Monsoon. He was very good, very fast, lightning fast, could strike the ball from distance, anywhere, left foot, right foot, very nippy, very crafty, like come and check out, boom, like a real, like a false 9 type of player. Like the kind of player like you don't like to mark because he's always moving. One touch, and behind. So first they matched me up with him. And he reminded me some ways of players from Trinidad, because players from Trinidad are very athletic. So we had strikers that was like a hybrid of that. Some that can hold the ball and some could play off the ball. So growing up in Trinidad, I played against a lot of players like that. But what was different with him was his runs, his IQ was very good. So he took me for a run, man, for at least 30, 40 minutes, all first half. But he didn't score. And he would normally score. He also was a player that played in the league before and would score all their goals. So then second half, they rested him. They brought in somebody else, Australian guy, big guy. He was a number 9, strong guy, could hold the ball up. And they let me go at him. And again, a hybrid of what I was used to. So we were battling. He just couldn't get past. I realized what they were doing, and I knew right away that they wanted to see if it's worth signing a striker or if this defender could change our mind. So I was just battling. And at some point, the game was so open because there was so much other players trying out, and everybody there was no organization. I think that's the thing about Asia that you would know about. It's a wild Western trials. Guys are there for themselves. Guys are not there to play as a team, to tuck in, to push up together, to recover. I mean, guys will leave you out to get killed purposely. They will do it purposely. So the game was wide open. The right back is all the way up. I really find the right back is all the way on the flank. I mean, the other centre back is far away from me. because maybe he's trying to think, okay, let me try to expose him. So it was me against the rest of the team, pretty much. Like literally, it was me against the rest of the team. And I'm moving, running. And he couldn't get past me. They brought in the other guy. Same thing. The guy that brought in second, he lasted about 15 minutes. And then they brought in the other guy who lasted about 10 minutes. And before 45 minutes, they blew off the game. They blew off the game. And the manager of the team, the coach of the team, and there's somebody else, the chairman, they all came with the guy that brought me, and they spoke to me in a corner. And they said, we want to keep you. And I was like, wow, what? My eyes open. I was like, because the day before they were like, we don't want to send it back. And I'm thinking, well, on the good side, I got to see Asia. I never thought in my life I would get to see Asia. I was like, and that's how I was thinking. I was like, okay, I got to see Asia. You know, that's a good thing. I'm safe. My wife is safe. You know, the conditions I'm staying is very nice. I'll go and see the country, you know, and then maybe go back home. Then the next day, they're telling me that they want me to stay. So I got into training mode right away, and went back home. I had to recover because it was a lot of running, and the type of grass they have over there is not all the teams have Bermuda grass. They have what we call cow grass. So it's the mud is a bit heavier. So when you sink there, it takes more out of your body to run through that grass. Same as in Trinidad. When you finish playing in them type of grasses, don't get me wrong, the field is flat, right? The field is flat, well maintained, everything, but the grass is heavy, the mud is heavy. So I went back home and I had to just kind of take some time to recover, bought some ice, and you know, sat down on the street. Arab Street is very, very nice. So you sit down on the street in a chair. It's like an open place, people go vending, restaurant, shopping, things like that. And I'm just icing, and people walking around see me icing. I was like, what's wrong with you? That's crazy. But yeah, and then a couple of days after I signed, it took me a couple more sessions. And then they brought me in and I signed, and that was kind of the beginning of my experience in Asia, which was, it came out of nothing really.
Incredible. I mean, even better than I remember it.
Yes.
I mean, but there's so many points from that story. The one is always being ready, game fit, because you don't know when they're going to tell you to jump in 90 minutes where your team's leaving you out to dry. And if you weren't fit, you wouldn't. There's no way you would have been able to do it.
Absolutely. That was okay. So when I finished playing in the US, I went almost a year and a quarter without a team. And I kid you not, there was never a day I missed training. From the moment I didn't have a contract to the day I went to Singapore, there was never a day I missed training on my own. I still wake up every morning, sometimes at 5 o'clock, and get ready to start training at 6. I'll be done like sometimes 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I used to go at George Mason because I know sometimes people will come and use the field, so I always want to get the field before. So I'll go out there mad early, start with the runs, then with my agility work, and then with the ball, you know, long ball, dribble, running with the ball, cutting, moving, and it was all by myself. And to what you just said, like, I knew I was fit. Because even on the weekends I would play in some games, like some local games, which was decent level. But sometimes I would play like 2 games in a weekend or 2 games in a day. So I knew that although I wasn't training with a team and playing in a season, my level of fitness wasn't too far off because I was doing my own work all the time. Because I was just trying to stay ready for what I knew at some point would have come. I didn't know when, I didn't know where, but I knew that I wanted to play, and I was going to play somewhere. I just didn't know when and where. So
that's self-belief.
Yes. So, staying ready is a big part of being a professional and playing professional, and on multiple levels. We're talking physically, training. We're talking mentally. It's easy to get distracted. I came from a country where we have the biggest carnival in the world. It's a party country. It's a party culture. And growing up there, I never participated in it. People like, what? You from Trinidad? But I don't know. And I pay tribute to this for the coaches that I had in my youth career. The older guys that used to always say, like, these things will always be there. And I would hear it over and over. These things would always be there. Your career is one time for a couple of years. Some people last 10 years. Some will last 2 years. Some will last a couple of months. So you have to give everything for that one opportunity to have a career. And that's the mentality I had all my career. College, and even when I started to play, all my career, I was just thinking I would train, I'd stay ready, and I know I would play. Playing was never a question. It was where, because I always had belief in myself, and I always knew that at some point I'll find something, and I eventually did. So a lot of lessons, as you said, to take away from that.
Yeah, one thing that I kind of noticed from these amazing stories was your ability to look on the bright side of any situation and just remain grateful, whether it was the weather in Buffalo and kind of seeing it for, it was cool that it was different and there was snow and this was something you weren't used to this opportunity in Singapore where you immediately think, oh, I'm not going to get anything after spending $1,500, but hey, I made it to Asia. Is this something that you kind of continue to bring into your life? And how important do you think this is for players, coaches, people in our position, just trying to make it in this life?
Absolutely. Again, I have a lot of friends and even family members that would always tell me, like, why you never seem like you care? Why you never seem worried about things when things are like really bad? I grew up in a very humble household, right? And I came from a very humble background. I used to make my own cleats. I used to make my own shin guards. Of course, it wouldn't last very long. But I say all that to say that I always look for a way to get something done. I never think that, things are impossible. And that is because the way I was brought up, the coaches that I had, and I keep saying old school guys, but these are the guys that really made you realize there's more to life than the way you look at it. So when I started to play and even going to college and playing overseas, and even now, like, the first thing I'm always grateful for is the opportunity. And without life, you would have the opportunity. I lost my best friend last year. He was a national team coach and had plans to bring me in to be his assistant coach. And I saw him in December, November, and I saw him again in December. And then February, I got a phone call from his phone. And then one day after or 2 days after, I missed the call. 1 day after or 2 days after, passed away. Now that opened my eyes more. But prior to that, once you have a life, you can recover from anything. No matter how much money you lose, some people say, you can't get back time. That is true. But you have your life and you have experience that you can learn from. So life is more powerful than that. Always be grateful for the opportunities that you have, that life gave you, because with all those opportunities, you will not be able to live in a better way, to have a positive experience down the road. And that's something that I always took away. And I think here's where it started from, I believe. My upbringing with coaches was always like, don't worry. Like, you're always worrying, things will be okay. There'll be more opportunities. I remember I was 13 years old and I had just made the U15 national team pool. And back then, how they would scout for the national team pool, they had like what they call ODP over here. They had centers, right? And each center had about 30 players or 40 players in every age group. And you would train for like for an entire season, a couple of months. And then they would pick the top 15, and then the top 10, and then top 5. So the top 15 would go into the national center. There was 4 or 5 of them. So you'll have a pool of over 50 players. Then it would cut it to 10 and to 5 from every district or states, whatever. We call it zones. And I made it to the last 5 for my zone to make the national team. And my father, they called my father and told him, back then they had no emails, it's phone calls, word of mouth. So they told him, hey, just let Fabien, this is so-and-so, the manager, so-and-so, tell Fabien Lewis that he has to report to training at 8 a.m. in the Javelin Center for Excellence. This is the final training session before the team leave for friendly games. They were preparing for a tournament. And my father forgot to tell me. So I went to practice with my club team. And the coach was like, what happened to you? Why didn't you go to practice? I said, what practice? He said, the final practice was on Saturday. Why didn't go? I said, I didn't know. He said, they call it that. So when I went home and I tell my dad, he said, oh yes, I forgot to tell you that, and blah. He's busy working and trying to provide for the family and whatnot, and he forgot to tell me this. So I started to cry. I went downstairs. I am literally behind a washing machine. It's crying. So he's calling my name to do something upstairs, and he didn't hear me. He walked downstairs and he see me behind. He walking around, and he saw me crying behind the washing machine. And of course, being a father, it's not no hug and, oh God, don't worry, everything. It's none of that. It's like, don't worry, man. Like, why you crying like that? Like, I really made that mistake. I'm sorry, but there'll be more opportunities. Trust me, there'll be more opportunities. Don't worry. It didn't sink in then, but it sunk in a couple of days after. And I went on to make the under-17 team. I was in the national under-20 pool. I didn't make the final cut for that. I made the under-23 Olympic team. So, and now I remember he said, don't worry, there'll be more opportunities. And that's why I took that lesson from a soccer perspective, missing out on something that he forgot to tell me, and generalize it with everything. Everything. Like, I used to rent before I owned, and I was paying more renting than owning with my mortgage. And I remember me and a friend having a discussion, and he's like, man, that's so much you're paying, like all the money's going back into rent and blah, blah. I was like, yeah, don't worry. That won't last forever. And that's just how I guess was formed. I guess that was a turning point in my life. You know, it's just who I am. I don't worry about a lot of things in my life. And when I mean I don't worry about it, doesn't mean I don't care. I do care. But when things don't go my way, I don't let it bother me to the point where it takes me down. I try to find a way to make it happen. And that's how I've always been. And that's how I am right now with everything that I do. I always try to find a pathway to navigate myself into a positive environment. So yeah, that's something else I would advise young players. Like, you know, not because you see your friend got picked to be in the MLS draft means it's the end of the world for you. Don't worry, there's a place for you. You just have to go and look for it. But there's a place for you, I promise you. Once you are true to the game, you're loyal to the game. And when I mean loyal to the game and true to the game, I mean you're paying your dues, you're training every day, you're humble, you're hunting, you will find a place to play, without a doubt. Without a doubt. There's many, many leagues, many, many countries, many teams, but you have to be that type of personality that I'll eventually get it. I'm not giving up, I'll eventually get it. And even to this day, right now, my aspirations as a person is very big. I always think very, very big. And sometimes people think, oh, you're not going to achieve that. But I still think it. I wanted to play in a World Cup. I had it written on a piece of paper. I created an email address to reflect when I would play in a World Cup. There was a World Cup that year that Trinidad and Tobago played in. It's mind-blowing. You know, so speak life to what you want is a big part of getting it. It's huge, believe it or not. Write it on a paper, look at it, remind yourself, wear a t-shirt that have it written down, or email address to remind you. And eventually it will come. But don't stress of the things that you don't have control over, because you're worrying about things that you can never control. Yeah. So that would be my recommendation to young players.
I mean, so much wisdom with that, and I know out of respect for your time, you had to get going soon. But is that what gave you? I mean, all of this and your career. Is that what gave you the idea to start something like Soccer Pass to help young players kind of make their own career? Like myself, you got my career started. Yeah, and I've taken a bunch from you, but I know many other players have also done the same thing with you.
Absolutely. So, growing up, again, I came from a very humble background, right? But there was many opportunities. I remember there was the David Beckham camp in Trinidad. It was 50 US. That's a lot of money back then. You know, 50 US could feed your family for a month. You know, my dad wasn't going to give me $50 for a couple of days of a camp, right? I missed out on that opportunity, but there was many more. There was international trips. When I was playing for Fabien Lewis in coaching school, there was international trips going to Miami. And a lot of my friends on the team and in my village that I played with, they went on the trip. I didn't. There was other international opportunities that I just, you know, my dad didn't see these opportunities as life-changing. He saw going to school, getting an education, getting a job, having a family, more important. And that is very important. You know, the knowledge I have right now about life, and if I was to have kids, I wouldn't send my kids to university just to get a degree. I would send them to school to be an entrepreneur, to learn how to manage a business, to learn how to invest your money, because your money in a bank is depreciating. When you factor in inflation, you're taking your money and investing your money, but the value of your money is actually what you could get for your money in 10 years. I rather put my money in an index fund and let it give me 8-9% return. So I'm saying that what my dad saw back then is what he knew. What I know now is very different. The opportunities that I didn't get is because my dad wanted the best for me, and he didn't see soccer being the best for me until I made the U17 national team and I got the scholarship. I started traveling the world. Then he said, wow. He backed off. He really did back off. Started to come to some games, calling me, how things going on, things like that. But Soccer Pass was motivated by giving players opportunities. I didn't have those opportunities for multiple reasons. I didn't have it. So I wanted to create a platform to provide players with their path to different things. Youth ID camps, pro ID camps, professional opportunities, international experiences through like youth teams traveling overseas and playing against different countries, summer camps, mentorship, just everything that is soccer related that you can think about. I wanted to provide players with an opportunity, and it wasn't something that I was new to. I was doing this before Soccer Pass was really formed. I was doing this way back in Trinidad. I didn't know I was doing it, but this was my calling. When I was in Trinidad, it have a saying that we say, link me. When you hear somebody say, Dylan, Sean, link me now, it means put me on. So anytime you're talking to a Trinidadian guy and he say link me, he means put me on. And I look back now, and I was putting on all my friends to everything. When I got my scholarship, I paved the way for 5, 10, 15 other guys to get scholarships from my school, from my community. It's like, Pam, call my coach, say, coach, I have a player for you. When I went on to play, I was the first Trinidadian player to play in Singapore, the second to play, the third to play in Asia. So I started to put on other players. Like there was 3 or 4 of them that came and was in Singapore with me. And then they started venturing out. One of them, Sean, when you met him in Mongolia, or playing in Mongolia, he was the one that put you on.
Yeah.
So, we kind of just was like linking people. It was just like, let's, putting people on because we didn't have the opportunity. And the motivation was nothing else but let's give other people an opportunity. It was nothing else. It was a phone call, and all of a sudden, that person became more than a friend. That person became a lifelong brother, because that person went into a field that you never thought he would be in. Lawyers, doctors, mechanic. All of a sudden, he's like, you know what? You had my back. You go to that person now and it's like, without even asking, yo, that person was a good person to me. I'm going to return it to him. And we didn't think about it like that. But that's life cycle. You do good, it will come back to you. I never understood it that way. I never understood the way. It was just given. It was just given. So Soccer Pass was just formed on the principle of providing opportunities and giving back. And literally that's what we do. And if I mean, not to get into things like in too much details, but a lot of the things that we do is pretty much run like a non-profit. Like, we don't We don't, I wouldn't say a non-profit, more like donations. You know, we don't, the motivation is not like to maximize profit. It's more like to make the event happen and to put players on. Most important. And a lot of times, I would say, parents come back to me. I got an email up to last night. We did a trip with a young team back in July. Prior to COVID, we did 2. I got an email up to last night from a parent thanking me for the opportunity and how much it changed his son's life up to last night. Things that happened 2 years ago. And that's what made me feel like, yeah.
Right.
You know, so I didn't have that. I didn't have opportunities like that, or somebody that, you know, that's why I'm so close to my coaches in Trinidad. Like when I go back home, I have to check them. I have to see them. Because as hard as they were on me, they were truthful and they were honest. And for me, at the time, it might have been brutally honest, but I'd rather be brutally honest than to give comforting lies. And I think now we live in a society where there's a lot of comforting lies, especially in soccer in America. There's a lot of stroking our backs and telling people things that they want to hear versus telling the truth. But Soccer Pass, the principle, the foundation of Soccer Pass is giving opportunities and being real to those opportunities, providing real opportunities to players, but being brutally honest to them as well. Like this is what's going to be like. Take it or leave it. Okay, I'll take it. Okay, I'll leave it. No problem. And that's what it was.
Love it. I love that. And like you said, with that email you received yesterday, there's no financial amount that can get even close to that feeling.
Absolutely, man. Like that is what makes you feel motivated to do it more.
Exactly.
Like you just have that inspiration to keep on going. And I always tell people, and it's the truth, I really do this as a hobby. I enjoy doing it. I really do enjoy doing it. When you get those emails or a phone call, or even being here, I'm thankful to be here on this podcast, and really happy to see you guys playing and doing really well. Because I remember Dylan, you had come with Sean when you did the ID camp with Boamate, and I know you went on to play in Australia afterwards, right? And then from there, you ended up in Germany, you know. So I'm just really happy just to touch and to connect with people that would have went on to do great things, but you would have met them somewhere in your path or helped them in some way, some form or some fashion. And for me, that's what's driving me right now is just them lifelong friendship, brotherhood that, you know, you would go to a grave with, man. Literally.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm thankful for that we kind of making our way into providing more opportunities for players. You know, I always have very honest conversation with players. I get a lot of DMs or Facebook messages, and it's random. A player will just send a video, and I'm like, "Are you serious? You just send a video? Like, what do you want me to do with that? No introduction, no." So he's going around sending hundreds of whoever else. But I want players to know this. Don't go about this doing it the wrong way. Establishing a network involves actually connecting. And connecting involves a formal introduction with a level of respect. And that's important. People will take you more serious when you do it the right way. You write them an email or a DM, but you introduce yourself in a professional way, in a respectful way. You explain what you're doing and why you want to do it. You quickly get a response from an agent or even from a friend, someone who probably don't even know you from the other side of the world that you want to go playing. He probably said, and that would touch him and say, you know what, this person sounds professional. I can put my name out for this person, just the way he approached me. So first impression is a lasting impression, very important. Second thing, I always want to let players know, with Soccer Pass, we provide opportunities. We recently sent a player over to Germany in the Oberliga. There's more players that we will be sending shortly, but it's not for everybody, right? And what I mean by that is this. I could only do so much. The reality of it is, the ball is in your court, number one. You have to be willing to make the sacrifice, to prepare yourself, to make sure you're training, you're healthy, your focus, and your overall preparedness is there. Being willing to invest in yourself, because nobody will invest in you, because nobody knows the value of you more than you value yourself. And if you don't value yourself more than what people value you, you will stay sitting down on a couch watching Instagram videos and message about from Ronaldo and highlights for the rest of your career. So you have to be willing to invest in yourself, and that comes from valuing yourself more than anybody else. Think high about yourself. That's very important. Now, on the other side, it's a very, very dog-eat-dog industry, and cutthroat industry. And the reason why I say it's not for everyone, if you're not someone that can take, I want to say take, because I don't want you to take anything. You might have to hear it, but don't take it and accept it. But if you can't hear someone saying no to you, or being negative to you and saying, this, you are not what I'm looking for, you're not in my plans, excuse me, then this is not for you. If you're not willing to take your last $1,000 to invest it in yourself, that can change your life, then this is not for you. Because these are the things that you have to be willing to do. I had a contract on the table for a player, Mexico 3rd Division. So it's below the Ascenso MX, which is a Premier A. The team is vying promotion to Ascenso MX, which is below the Liga MX. All three professional leagues. The coach and I met him when I was in Mexico. At the time, he was at a team called Interplaya. They were 4th tier. And we remained friends. He came over here, we did some work together, and blah, blah. And he reached out to me. He said, Fabien, remember that center back that you sent me? Is he still available? I said, yeah. I said, let me make a phone call. Call the guy. Guy's still available. Message the coach. Yes, he's still available. Okay, here's what you want. I want you to fly over here tomorrow. I'll pick him from the airport. I'll take him, blah, blah. This is what we can offer him. If we're going to play one game, if he's a real deal, we'll sign him right away. The player told me that the amount that they offered, which I think was like about $800, is not enough. It was his first contract in a country that have a high level of football, with a high level of coaches. One of the coaches today that everybody knows as famous, Pep Guardiola, he spent some years in Mexico, where he, I would say, transformed his coaching intelligence, his coaching IQ, helped his attacking concept of the game, along with, of course, with Spain. The Italian side probably helped his defensive side. But the guy said the salary was not enough for him to leave the US. never played professionally before, never played in college before. Let me start over. Never played in college before, never played professionally before, have no other opportunities, came to me and told me that he wants to be a professional. A coach is asking to see you for one game. Pick you from the airport, play the game the next day, and you're saying that this is not why you leave the US. So then you are serious. Now, on one hand, I understand why players want to put a quote-unquote a number sign. That is the part that makes you feel emotionally happy. It's part of the emotional happiness. I'm making $3,000 a month. I'm making $4,000 a month. But everyone is not going to start there. And everyone is not going to receive that amount in their career or at the beginning of their career. But part of the emotional happiness, emotional connection to the game is also playing professionally, learning and growing. And when that happens, your emotional level increases, your confidence rises, you start feeling invincible, you start being hungry for more, and you start playing better. When you start playing better, you start opening more eyes. When you start opening more eyes, you start attracting more dollar signs. And that's how the emotional level happiness rises. So, with Soccer Pass, with the players that come to us, I try to be honest with them so that they know what they're getting into. And I make them make the decision. And if they want it, no problem. If they don't, no problem. I know what I wanted. And I did what I would do. And if I had to do it again, I would do it again. Eyes closed, no problem. No problem. In fact, I would have probably invested more. I probably would have gone overseas more often than I did back then than I did now, recently when I retired, because now I realize how much I missed. I'm like, man, in Southeast Asia, the market is a big market, a huge market. And I didn't know of it until I went there. So if you're not willing to take a chance on yourself, nobody will take a chance on you, because there's too many players, not enough teams, and in order for you to get out there and be seen, you have to invest in yourself. Of course, with some calculations. I'm not telling you just to go somewhere blindly and to go in the middle of nowhere, but you have to be willing to take a chance on yourself, because nobody else will take a chance on you. And that's with everything in life. It's not just soccer. That's just life, period.
Yeah.
So yeah, boys, I hope you guys are continuing to inspire other players by sharing this information, and also by linking them.
Yeah.
What's the saying again? Link me?
Link, like LINK.
Yeah.
But yeah, let me
I gotta say it in the Trinidadian accent.
Yeah, like link me.
Link
Like
me.
link me, we say me, link me.
Link me.
Yeah, link me, yeah. So anytime you see people say link me.
That's footwork. That's why we started this.
Yeah, it's link me. So put me on. Yeah.
All right, Fabien, thank you again for taking this conversation. I know we did go over your time out, but that was, there's so much wisdom in this conversation.
I couldn't stop him. I just wanted to hear it. Yeah.
At points I felt like I was watching like an amazing movie.
No, it was very good to be here, boys. Again, I'm very happy and grateful to be here. I want you guys to keep doing what you're doing. What you're doing is great. Education is key. Giving information is important. when I grew up, there wasn't Instagram. You know, a lot of the younger players have that now. You know, so you guys are making a huge impact, not just to people that are in your circle, but by the world, because anyone can find you, anyone can hear these things. And I think this is so crucial to helping pave the way for a lot of players. So keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job. And if there's anything else I can do to help you guys, let me know.
Appreciate that so much.
No problem. Thank you. And good luck with your next season.
Okay, thank you, Fabien.
Thank you, Fabien.
All right.
Footwork is sponsored by ourselves, but also Kong Fitness and Merchant Designs, baby. Follow us on Instagram at Footwork_podcast. Twitter is at Footwork Podcast. YouTube and Facebook, just check out Footwork Podcast, search it. Email us if you need anything, any questions at footworkpodcast@gmail.com. And remember, plug, pass. Tell your parents, Amazon delivery guy, mailman, I don't know who, just tell them. Like, subscribe, review, all of it helps. Danke.